What's going on, y'all? Today I am bringing you guys my full review on the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s. I've put 35 miles on this shoe, so let's see how it held up. So for those of you who don't exactly know what Saucony's Endorphin Speed line is made for, this is a plated, speedy daily trainer. So it does have a nylon plate, but we'll get more into that in the cushion setup. So let's start off with the outsole of the Endorphin Speed 5s. So for the outsole, as you can see, there's this a little bit unorthodox pattern, but honestly, it worked very well from a traction point of view. I live in California and it is summer right now, so I didn't really have a chance to run in a whole lot of different conditions in these, but I mostly ran on the road in pretty sunny weather conditions, and these held up very well, like I would expect. I did feel like I was gripping the ground very well when I was doing turns, or if I was trying to like zigzag in the shoe. I did feel very confident in this outsole, and I think that's attributed to the rubber compound used on the outsole as well as the pattern. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a basketball shoe pattern, which is always a good thing. That means you're going to get pretty good traction. As for durability, with 35 miles on this outsole, I did say in my first run review that the outsole does look a little thinner than maybe previous Saucony models or other Saucony models. And I will say it still looks pretty minimal, but with 35 miles on the shoe, I can still see some of the actual etchings on the outsole, so that's always a good sign. I just don't exactly know if these are going to last as long as previous Saucony models or other Saucony models. Saucony durability is one of the best out of all the brands, so to be determined for the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s. But overall, durability as well as traction with 35 miles on the shoe was good to go. Moving on to the cushion setup of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s, we have a full-length Power Run PB foam with a nylon plate in the middle. We have 36 millimeters of stack height in the heel, dropping to 28 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. And overall, this setup, honestly, to me felt a little bit minimal, and that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing, but it felt minimal, firm, stable, and a little bit bouncy. So that's how I would kind of describe the shoe. So I did throw a bunch of different paces at this shoe. I did throw one long run. I actually ran a half marathon in these today, and overall, I feel like this setup is actually a pretty fun setup in the sense that this shoe is so lightweight. It feels pretty low to the ground, so it doesn't feel like you have an abundance of cushioning under your foot, which is sometimes actually kind of a fun feeling because you actually feel the ground and you feel like the shoe isn't really slowing you down too much. So I really enjoyed that part of the shoe. But when it came to running longer distances, like I just ran the half marathon today, I wasn't running like as fast as maybe like my marathon pace or my half marathon pace. So it was actually pretty comfortable running in the shoe. I was running a little slower than my marathon pace, and I felt that the cushion setup did its job. It was a little bit firm, a little bit responsive, and when I was running at that slower pace, it did feel like this shoe had enough cushion for me. So with that being said, if I were to run a little bit faster or I wanted to push the pace, especially on a long run, I don't think that this shoe for me personally has enough cushion. But you know, that could also be a personal preference type of thing, or maybe I'm just used to wearing a lot of high stack shoes nowadays. But I do think that if I trained enough, I would be able to hit those paces on those long runs, but I just don't think that this shoe would be my first choice for those faster long runs. Now, when it came to shorter runs, faster runs, this shoe from a cushion point of view really had me covered. It does feel pretty minimal underfoot, especially if you're used to, like I said, those higher stack shoes nowadays, but it does have ample impact protection as well as it does have a nice slight bounce. Even though that this midsole is a little on the firmer side, I think that that's nice for a stability point of view as well as giving you that little push or little bounce, and you don't feel like you're sinking into the shoe, which is hence why they probably named this the Speed, because you are able to kind of pick up the pace a little bit easier than in other shoes. When it comes to the plate within the shoe, it is a nylon plate, but I would say that it's not a super stiff ones. I didn't think that I felt too many of the properties of the plate, or I didn't feel like I was getting a propelling feeling, which isn't a bad thing as well. I think that some people are going to use this as their daily trainer. And even though it is plated, it's not plated to the point where it's going to, I think, mess with your calf muscles or your tendons or anything. I think it's a pretty chill plate, so you should be good to go on that. So if you're looking for a more minimal setup in your running shoe, you don't want a super high stack height shoe, or you don't want a super stiff kind of race day like shoe, but you kind of want that in between. I think that this is going to be a good option when it comes to cushion. You're going to get that impact protection, you're going to get that firm feeling underfoot, and you're not going to feel sluggish when running in this shoe. So it will be easier from a midsole point of view to hit your faster paces in this shoe, but I'm a little bit skeptical, especially for myself, if I were to take this on a 13 plus mile run at a faster pace. So for me, I don't know if I'd feel super confident running, 18 to 20 miles or a marathon in this shoe, especially if I'm running that a little bit faster. Now, if I'm running that a little bit slower, I think that this shoe would have more than enough impact protection. But like I said, once I start picking up the pace, I feel like the cushion may not be enough to cover my whole body and just make me feel good on the run. So that might be a personal thing. I might not be in shape, but overall, I thought that the cushion setup was comfortable. One thing to note too is that in the first 10 miles of the shoe, I would say that this shoe takes a little bit of time to break in from a cushion point of view. I thought that it felt really, really firm the first 10 miles in the shoe, but after that, eventually the midsole kind of softened up and it got a little bit more comfortable. So that's something to note if you first try on the shoe and you're thinking like, wow, this is a really stiff shoe. It just takes a little bit of miles, a little bit of time to break that midsole in, but overall you should be good to go. So if you do like that lower to the ground feeling, you don't want that super high stack height that all running shoes have nowadays, even though this is kind of like a higher stack running shoe, you're definitely going to get a little bit of ground feel while still maintaining that impact protection and stability. Now, moving on to the upper as well as the fit of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s. If I were to say that there was one downfall to the shoe, I would say that it was probably the fit for me personally. Now, I have a size 12 foot, a little bit wider than average, but I get regular size 12s in all of my running shoes, including this one. And from a width perspective and the base perspective, I feel like these were totally fine. I just had a little bit of trouble with the laces, especially towards the heel, and just the fit overall in the midfoot and the heel in particularly. And then also with the materials, I felt that the materials were very soft and it was very comfortable. Especially, I did like the ventilation that this shoe provided because it is a pretty thin layer of mesh, but I just felt like my foot moved around a little bit too much, especially for a shoe that you're supposed to run a little bit faster in. Typically, when I run faster, I kind of don't want to feel like my foot is moving all around the shoe, especially if I'm making turns or, like I'm just trying to push it to the limit. I don't want to feel like my shoes are falling off or my shoes are kind of flopping around, which sometimes I felt like in this shoe, I kind of felt that. I did lace up two different ways, one without the runner's loop like I have them right now, and one with the runner's loop. With the runner's loop, I did feel like the laces were a little bit too short as well as the tongue was a little bit too short, so it caused a little bit of discomfort in my upper ankle when I did do the runner's loop. So I kind of took that runner's loop off and I've been running without the runner's loop. So I guess it's kind of a trade-off that you're gonna have to make. Either I have to buy maybe longer laces or you have to buy longer laces and then just dug it out with the tongue being a little bit too short. But with the runner's loop, the heel lockdown was definitely better, but I did still feel like my foot was moving throughout the midfoot and maybe a little bit in the forefoot, which I personally didn't really like, especially for a speedier shoe. Typically, speedier shoes fit a little bit tighter. This one didn't feel loose in the sense of like it was too long or too wide at all, but it just felt like there was a lot of volume sometimes in the shoe, and I think that lockdown didn't really like lock my foot down and it kind of just moved a little bit too much for my liking for a speed shoe. So overall, I think that the fit was true to size. I also think that the upper needs a little bit of break-in time to kind of mold to your foot. With 35 miles on the shoe now, I feel like it's molded a little bit more to my foot and it's getting a little bit better with the lockdown, especially when I tie my shoes a little bit tighter. But overall, I just feel like the fit was kind of its downfall or the biggest downfall of the shoe because the upper was really lightweight, super thin, super breathable. I really like the materials used on the upper. The heel collar, I mean, it was decent materials, but I just feel like they could have maybe reinforced the midfoot a little bit or have like a couple of like maybe like what Nike has, fly wire to kind of really lock down your midfoot so your foot doesn't really move in the shoe. So that might be a personal fit problem, but I did get my true size and I still felt like maybe there was a little too much volume. Width and length of the shoe was totally fine. But yeah, my foot just moved a little bit too much in the shoe for my liking. It didn't cause any blisters or discomfort on the run, but it just was like more of a mental feeling of like, oh, my heel's slipping a little bit on my left foot. My right foot's kind of moving all around, especially when I'm running faster. I felt like my shoe I felt like my foot wasn't super contained in this shoe. So overall, the upper and the fit was probably the biggest downside of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s. I did really like the lightweight feeling and the very minimal upper of the shoe because overall the shoe felt super light and it almost felt like I was wearing nothing, which is really nice. But then again, my foot was moving around while I was running a little bit faster, and sometimes even running slower, I still felt the shoe was kind of just not fitting my foot 100% correctly. So overall, how do I feel about the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s? I really like them. Priced at, 175, they did raise it $5 from the Endorphin Speed 4 and the Endorphin Speed 3s. These do remind me of the Endorphin Speed 3s a lot. They feel really lightweight. They feel really similar when it comes to the cushion point of view as well. They feel pretty minimal. They feel like you're kind of free to run as fast as you want. But like I said, I would definitely recommend trying these shoes on in store to make sure that they fit your foot properly and you get that good lockdown. Because for me, it might be a personal thing where my foot doesn't fit this shoe very well, but if you can get a good fit in this shoe, I think that there's a lot of potential because it does offer a lot of good qualities other than the fit. Like the cushion setup was minimal but firm and responsive, and then the upper is super lightweight, and overall the shoe just feels a little bit on the faster side, which is what I like and which is what I guess they're going for with Endorphin Speed line. So overall, I would say that it is a good shoe. I don't think that it is a great shoe. I enjoyed running in it though, however. I just wish that the fit was a little bit better in the shoe. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my review on the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5s. If I've missed anything or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section down below. I do my best to kind of respond to everyone. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next review or next video. I don't exactly know what's going to come next, but I am going to start testing the Skechers Aero Sparks next. So stay tuned for that full review. Other than that though, I have nothing else to say, so I will catch you guys in the next video.